Hey, today I'll be talking about episodes 70 through 73 of RuYi's Royal Love. A girl with apparently unparalleled beauty is offered to the emperor. He accepts, but we spot her as she's making her way to the palace, and it's clear that this is happening against her will. Her fiancé is chasing after her, and his yelling causes an avalanche which kills him. How's that for a tragic backstory? She makes it to the palace and is brought in to see the emperor. When you hype someone up as the most beautiful thing in the world, how can any actress live up to that? She's really beautiful, but everyone is reacting like they've seen a literal goddess fall from the sky. The emperor might as well be that cartoon wolf.
皇上.
She starts to dance, and RuYi can already tell the emperor is going to be a problem. He can barely keep his tongue in his mouth. It's going well, but then in the middle of it, she pulls out a knife. Great guard work. She clearly intended to hurt the emperor, but wanting to protect her, the emperor says she must have simply gotten too enthralled in her dance. She steals one of the guard's swords, intending to kill herself, but is again stopped. She tells everyone that she wants to die so she can be with her dead fiancé. Since she was never married though, free game. Really, all of this drama should have disqualified her from entering the palace, but the emperor is already a goner. Despite his mother and RuYi's protests, she's made the mistress of her own palace. Some people have said that this is a marked change for the emperor, but I don't really think so. When he was freshly in love with RuYi, he was willing to fight anyone to be with her. When he was smitten with Mei, he snatched her up even though the palace was in a mourning period and his mother was upset with him. Not to mention, how many times has Yanwan done something unforgivable only to get back into his good graces with a swish of her hips? I guess what I'm saying is, the emperor has always been a horny toad, and while this is more reckless than he's ever been, he also has more power than he's ever had. I mean, really, what is anyone going to say to him? Nothing. They'll give him the side eye, but they can't actually make him do anything. So this is the same guy, just that now there are no checks to his power. The new girl, XiangJian, stops eating and completely ignores the emperor whenever he comes to see her. The emperor doesn't care, and he becomes so infatuated with her that it starts affecting his work. It looks like a case of you want what you can't have, as the more she rejects him, the more he insists on spending all of his time with her. Every waking hour is spent trying to seduce her. He has her dad write her a letter, buries her fiancé, brings in maids and cooks from her home tribe so she can get used to palace life. He's building her a completely new palace, just pulling out all the stops. Yanwan gets pregnant again, and he literally could not care less. All of the women and even his sons are really disappointed in what he's become. Although really, 5th Prince isn't in a much better position, as he's completely in love with Yunjiao, the planted spy, with no idea that she intends to hurt him. 3rd Prince finally has enough when his mother gets really sick and the emperor won't even spare a moment to go and see her. Though everyone's been thinking it, he's finally the first person to tell the emperor that he's being a complete and total buffoon.
他们说自从韩氏入宫，皇阿玛就为了他冷落后宫，无心朝政，盛世清明就要毁在他的手上。
It goes exactly as you would expect it to, and the emperor has him dragged out. As he's being forced out, 3rd Prince starts to spit up blood. He's really unwell, and the emperor starts to think that maybe he made a mistake. Nope, of course not. He blames Chun, saying she made him say those things because she's jealous of the new woman. No, dude, he said those things because they're true. Chun is still really sick, but she still goes out in the rain to beg for forgiveness for her son, even though he did nothing wrong. The emperor tells her to go, but she keeps begging until eventually RuYi has to step in. The emperor then brings up the whole flower hairpin thing tying Chun to the empress's death, which is such nonsense. You've had this so-called evidence for 12 years now, and only now is it suddenly a problem? Chun passes out and has to be taken away, while RuYi goes inside to talk to the emperor. Anyone with eyes can see that what's really pissing the emperor off is that someone talked about his beloved new girl, but he keeps coming up with random bullshit reasons for being angry at the mother and son. Seizing the opportunity, all the women in the harem band together in support of Chun and congregate outside the empress's palace. They're of course looking out for themselves as well, but this solidarity is nice to see. Consort Ying becomes the 2nd person to officially call the emperor out and tells him none of the women can support what he's doing.
臣妾不是放肆，是伤心。臣妾替纯贵妃和3阿哥伤心，替自己和满宫的嫔妃们伤心，替皇后娘娘伤心，也替皇上您伤心。
Ying is really so brave. Also, I love that when the emperor tells her to leave, it's only after looking at RuYi for approval that she actually does. The funny thing is, XiangJian is in full support. She hopes the other women can manage to get her kicked out. The emperor remains obstinate and insists the women can kneel for as long as they want, but he won't send her away. Let's backtrack a bit here. Remember how many times RuYi has had to suffer because the emperor's hands were tied? He couldn't stand up for her because his officials were against something, or his mom, or the other women, or this or that. There was always an excuse to throw RuYi under the bus. But now that he has a woman who everyone, including the woman herself, wants gone, Now all of a sudden it's, I don't care what anyone else says because I love her. Imagine if he had been even half this devoted to RuYi. RuYi goes out to see the other women. This is really when her job is so tough because she's supposed to be the voice for them, and she does of course agree with them, but she's forced to come out and spew some nonsense she doesn't believe because she also represents the emperor. It's like being middle management at the worst company ever. Without support from the empress, the women know better than to keep pushing and leave. The emperor, trying to lay this whole thing to rest, promotes Chun to imperial noble consort. RuYi goes to see Chun, but it's too late. She passes away just before RuYi can give her new garments. I had really started to like the woman Chun was becoming. Sad that she had to experience all this pain just before she died. 3 months later, her son, the third prince, dies as well. Then we cut to the emperor drinking in frustration, and I am so pissed that, like a fool, for a moment I thought he was vexed about the death of Chun and his son.
人就想不明白了，不过就是区区一个普通的寒部男子，相见为何就对他念念不忘？
He takes his drunk self over to XiangJian's palace and tries to force himself on her. In the struggle, she takes the hand of a clock and uses it to cut her face. The emperor has it covered up and won't allow anyone to spread the news since damaging the emperor's property is a punishable offense. Liu is like, right, totally get it, and then immediately goes to tell RuYi what happened. She goes to see him and he has the audacity to ask her for help.
这一见到相见，才知道什么叫一见倾心。
Imagine saying something like this to your wife. I don't know how RuYi isn't bawling watching the man she loves become this pathetic piece of shit. He begs her to go and see the girl and make sure she won't kill herself, and she has no choice but to go. RuYi goes to see XiangJian and finds that she intends to starve herself to death. She tells her that she understands how she feels, but that if she dies, no one will be left to remember her dead fiancé. She asks if she'll tell her a bit about him.
他的眼睛特别的明亮。
As XiangJian talks, RuYi is no doubt reminded of how she felt about the emperor when she was younger. She tells XiangJian that she also had a lover in her youth, but he's gone now, so she knows how she feels. She's not exactly lying. I mean, the emperor as we knew him is dead. Finally, RuYi brings up XiangJian's family and tribe, kind of guilting her into staying strong and living for them. I'm not disappointed in RuYi for this, I'm just sad for her. And I think she's right. I don't know what the emperor would do if XiangJian continues to reject him, but hurting her family would definitely not be outside the realm of possibility. In the end, XiangJian agrees to eat.
再喝一口。
As RuYi is leaving, you can see that this is just killing her. Not long after, the emperor invites all the women to see the new palace he had built for XiangJian. They go inside and find it decorated in the style of her tribe's people. And like, it's bad enough he built it, why does everyone else need to see it? But wait, there's more. He even built a whole temple for her. And he brought in a bunch of people from the village to see her. They're all like, the emperor is so good to us, we're so grateful you're his bride, please have sex with him. If it sounds like they've got a gun to their head, that's because they do. Any way you look at it, this is more of a threat than a gift. Then the emperor shows up, and he's wearing Han tribe clothes. The history of the Qing dynasty was pretty much a never-ending effort to take over every tribe and surrounding country and make a unified dynasty. Part of that is making sure your brand is strong. Many Chinese tribes were forced to adopt Manchurian customs with things like the hair-cutting law of 1645, which forced everyone to adopt that half-shaved long braid look. Assimilation also included things like food, clothing, religion, language, which is why when the women come to the palace, no matter how powerful or respected the tribes they came from were, they now wear the Manchurian style of clothing and hair, and they don't speak their native languages. And here comes this fool. Not only is this an embarrassing show of infatuation, it's a bad move politically that could have serious ramifications, because it looks like he's favoring one tribe's people over the others. He promotes XiangJian to noble lady, giving her the new name Rong. He tells all the gathered ladies to respect her and try to get along with her. Oh, so that's why we had to be here. XiangJian understands the favor and the unspoken threat. It looks like she won't be able to hold out any longer. I don't think I need to say anything more about the emperor. He is literally out here praying to his ancestors for vajayjay. There's no coming back from that. In fact, there's nothing to say about anything here. He sucks, this sucks for RuYi, it sucks for XiangJian, Chun's death sucked, it all sucks. And now for a look at the book. XiangJian's introduction to the novel is so dramatic and beautifully written. Tried my best to do it justice, but you know, not a writer. Years later, RuYi could still recall the day when she first met XiangJian. March had only just begun and the weather was restless, rippling with the start of a new season. RuYi counted off the flowers that were to bloom. According to the flowering calendar, first would be the peach blossoms, then the caria, then the roses. Hailan was by her side, cheerfully continuing her count. Next up would be the begonias, then the pear blossoms, then the magnolias. It was just an ordinary day. The so-called celebration banquet was no different from any of the others. The songs were just as emotional, the dances just as passionate. Every day was like gold dust floating in the sunlight, covering the gray and drab in dazzling gold. It was hectic, but empty. Day after day, she had become accustomed to the unchangingness of it all, like feeling your way down a long red wall with every pause finding still the endless red ahead. That was, until the day XiangJian entered the palace. I mean, does that not just set a scene? Fear grips every woman as they watch a literal angel descend upon them and realize that the emperor might never see them again. Yanwan even grabs RuYi's hand in the middle of the banquet and whispers to her that XiangJian cannot be allowed to enter the palace. XiangJian does try to kill the emperor. He does have her protected and moved into her own palace. The emperor then visits her 3 to 5 times a day despite her indifference. They do have some actual conversations in the book, like at one point she's disgusted with him when he comes to see her after Chun and the third prince's deaths, asking what kind of person he is to be thinking about a new woman when the woman who was by his side for years and his oldest son just died. People have been killed for less insulting words, but the emperor simply says the dead are dead and life has to go on. The day when he tries to force her to stop resisting, he actually gets injured as well, and when the doctor comes, he makes him see her first, even though he's actively bleeding and XiangJian is begging him to just let her die. During his conversation with RuYi, he says initially he was enraptured by her beauty, but he's fallen for her single-minded devotion to her dead fiancé and how fierce she is in sticking to her decision. Which is something, I guess, better than just she's hot. After yet another unnecessarily cruel reference to how wonderful the previous empress was compared to her, RuYi relents to go and convince XiangJian not to kill herself. She tells him that if what he wants is an empress that does as she's told, she will be that for him, but from this day onwards she'll no longer consider herself his wife. Till next time, thanks for watching.